Hey everyone, and welcome to Pathfinder Drum Corps lesson number 3 on the background and introduction to reading drum corps sheet music. Now you might be saying to yourself, why do I need a whole video on just the background of drum sheet music? Why can't you just start and we'll learn as we go? Well, it's a great concept except for one major problem. There is no universal standard for writing drum corps sheet music, like there is on a piano or a trumpet. Now there are some things that are common, but there is no such thing as an absolute where a note or an icon always means the same thing. This is true even for the most basic element, the drum clef itself. A true drum clef looks the same as a regular treble or bass clef, except the clef symbol is replaced with dual vertical bars. But I have seen some sheet music with no clef symbol at all, and even some that still use the treble clef. However, the bigger inconsistency is the meaning of the notes. A regular solid note is normally where you would hit the drum or crash the cymbals, but you may see the note replaced with an X, a triangle, or some other symbol. The other types of note heads could mean hitting the hoop, clicking the sticks together, or even hitting the shell itself. But since there is no universal standard, you will have to refer to the sheet music and hope it has some sort of legend for all of the symbols used. The symbol section seems to have the least amount of uniformity when it comes to drum corps sheet music. There are many different types of cymbal sounds, such as crash, crash choke, hi-hat choke, sizzle, and several others, and each one needs a different indication in the sheet music. I've seen a crash signified with a solid note or with an X. Some sheet music moves the notes around the staff for the various sounds. I went online to find what I could with drum corps sheet music. Here is an example of Baylor University from 2008 on drum corps notation. Notice how they use the entire staff for the various techniques. Here is an example from freedrumlinemusic.com on drum corps notation. Notice at the bottom in all caps where it says, "There is no universal standard for marching percussion notation." Sheet music, especially for large drum corps, usually has each instrument on its own staff, like this. You can do a search for drum corps sheet music, but what you normally get is trap set sheet music, which is different but still has some similarities. But what you will quickly see in the drum corps sheet music that you can find is that there is no uniform set of rules on how to write it. Sometimes the snare part is written on one solid line instead of a clef, like this. When displayed in a staff, the snare is normally placed here. If all the snares, basses, cymbals, and multi-toms play the same respective parts, in other words, no first chair, second chair, etc., then you may see drum corps sheet music where the cymbals, snares, and basses are combined onto one staff with the multi-toms on a lower staff. Or in rare instances, you may find it where everything is all on one staff, the same way that trap kit sheet music is written. Luckily, I could not find an example of that type of writing online. When I write out drum corps sheet music, I use one of two methods. The first is a two-staff method like this, where the snare, bass, and cymbals are on the top staff and the multi-toms are on the bottom. And this is mainly used just to save space and fit more onto a sheet of paper. The other is the more common four-staff method, where each instrument is on its own staff, with the cymbals at the top, the next staff down is the snare, then bass, and then multi-toms at the bottom. However, if you prefer this style, you may want to swap the bass onto the very bottom, which is more common. The reason I put multi-toms on the bottom is so that the music is displayed the same no matter if I'm using the two-staff or the four-staff method. When all snares play the same part, the common location for the snare notation is located here, in what would be the C of a treble clef. Even if the note head changes to indicate clicking the sticks or hitting the hoop, it will still be located here. Some sheet music uses the whole staff, and different locations mean different types of techniques or strokes. But the more common way is to always place the snare here, and to use different icons to indicate a different technique. Likewise, in this method, bass is at the bottom, in what would be the lower F of a treble clef. Like the snare, some sheet music uses several places on the staff for different bass drum parts. Often this is meaning for different size bass drums, but we are just going to keep it simple for now. Cymbals in this method are always on the line above the top line, in what would be an A note of a treble clef. I use a solid note for a crash and the X for a hi-hat choke, since these are the two most common cymbal sounds, and likely the only two that you're going to use for beginners. But, as you saw from Baylor and other places, sometimes the cymbals use the entire staff. Multitoms, also called tenors in some sheet music, will use the 4 spaces between the lines for the 4 toms if using a quad. The highest pitch tom is the highest space, next highest pitch is in the next highest space, and so on down. In a quint, where there are 5 drums, the top line will be the highest pitch tom. Then the second highest drum goes into the top space, and so on down. So when you combine it all together, it would look like this. Or like this. Okay, that was quite a bit of background, and we haven't even started to explain how to actually read and play the music. But it is very important to know that there is no universal method to write drum corps sheet music, so that if you find some music online, you can be aware that pieces from different sources may be inconsistent. But one possible benefit to this is that you can come up with your own style of writing sheet music for what works best in your drum corps. Personally, I use a free computer program called Musync, which is not that bad for being free, but it does have its limitations and it's only available on Windows. If you're interested, it's Musync is spelled M-U-S-I-N-K. In the next video, we will start from the beginning on how to read drum corps sheet music, which means that in the meantime, I get to make a whole bunch of sheet music images and audio clips, so I need to get going on those. Catch you next time.